right, you ready to try and do this first episode?
Let's do it. Let's make podcast magic.
Hi, welcome to Duality Bites. Duality Bites. I'm Carmela, one of the hags of Hag Gaming. I also play Ginny, our Orderborne Seraph farm friend. With me, I have Jay Ben, who plays Lemma, our inscrutable wordsmith. Hi, Jay Ben.
Hi, Carmela. I am not a hag, but I am hag adjacent.
Hag adjacent. You know what? We'll take it. Jay Ben, I wanted to talk to you today about ancestries within Daggerheart, because from the outside, Ginny is the only non-human of the group, being a fawn, but mechanically, Evelyn is actually the only human of our group. Orlean is a reskinned fungrel, so he's a fungrel in human skin, which is a very weird thing to say out loud, which is partially based on Asteria asking us to not try to create a sexy fungus, and David going, bet. So there's other pieces to it, but that is the gist of it. And then Lemma is a mixed ancestry. Neither one of them are human mechanically, but Lemma, of course, appears human. So you want to tell me about how that came together and what ancestries you kind of mashed together to make Lemma?
Yeah. So I think the arriving at that endpoint was because of two things that Asteria said. The first was, and I think she directed her her wish to me originally, not to inflict upon her a sexy fungus person. Because she's played a lot with me before, and I think
it's a thing that you would do.
Well, that specific thing is not a thing that I have done, but I think she associates sort of unpredictable player choices, perhaps, with me. But I didn't go that route. But she also mentioned, I think we were talking about inspirations for the campaign, and she mentioned The Giver by Lois Lowry, and that crystallized a lot for me in terms of the direction that I wanted to go in with Lemma. And I ended up being really attracted to this, again, because of like that particular comparison and because of a lot of the thematic stuff that Asteria was building into the world. I became very interested in the liminal space at when we die and the stories that we leave behind. And the fungrel ancestry has a trait that's basically a weak version of D&D's Speak with Dead.
Right.
It's I forget what it's called.
It is called, I have the handbook pulled up next to me. It is Death Connection.
Death Connection, yes. So
yes.
That seemed really, really right. And I wasn't interested in playing as a sexy fungus man. I was interested.
It was incidental to what ended up happening.
But this feature was really, really right for the stuff that was starting to appeal to me about the setting, and about the way that my character fit into it. And then I didn't necessarily want to have like fungusy tendrils of communication, which is the other fungal trait. So Asteria very kindly let me take the trait I wanted, based on a custom history for my character, and combine it with something else.
And do you remember what the other thing was?
I will once I look at my character sheet. Purposeful design, yes.
Right, which is from the Clank.
Yeah.
So you fused a robot and a mushroom man, and you made Lemma.
Yeah. So the robot thing, again, it was more about the exact text of the trait than of the trappings of Clank.
Sure.
But yeah, the idea of coming from an upbringing where you're initiated into this very rigid set of rules and principles and tenets, and that defining who you are and who you think you're allowed to be in the world.
Right. I think it's one of the things I kind of like, and part of this is, our GM's permissiveness is not the right word that I'm looking for, but her support in this of taking, mixed ancestry, which is a mechanic within the game itself.
Right.
But they kind of mean like if you're going to make like a half elf, kind of deal.
Right.
but this is literally taking two pieces of two different ancestries that just fit and then reskinning it as a human.
Yeah.
Because Lemma is human.
Yes.
For sure. But you have these two traits that I think Lemma uses very. There's a particular scene in the second episode where Lemma uses death connection with a monster that he just killed. And it was a very, very powerful moment, I think, for Lemma. But listening back to it, the imagery was very intense. Do you remember using that or how that felt?
Yeah, I think it was. We'll, I think, get to this in an earlier or perhaps later episode of Duality Bites. I don't know how they're going to be ordered, but I think there's definitely a phase of the campaign when the way that Lemma uses his abilities is circumscribed, and so I was looking for opportunities to try stuff with those abilities and see what they would do to the character. And that was a very welcome opportunity to do so. I think I also really, I guess part of what I like the idea about reskinning Lemma as a human and giving him this stuff is it's not necessarily stuff he's been doing his whole life.
Right.
I think in my mind, Death Connection is something that because of his ancestry. So for those who might not have absorbed this from listening to the main episodes or whatever, Lemma's from a community called the Elegists, who are basically traveling death doulas. So they move from community to community and help the recently deceased move on. So Lemma's somebody who's been sort of in kind of a priestly caste his whole life,
right,
in contact with death, commemorating death, telling the stories of those who have passed on. And so he's familiar with that, but Death Connection is not something, he's not from a group of people who have just been like absorbing the memories and emotional resonances of the dead all the time, constantly. It sort of happened as a result of the way that his background interacted with his poetry.
Right.
So I like the idea that it's new for him rather than just like, oh yeah, I'm from a species that just does this.
Right. It was kind of a spontaneous thing. Like the elegant design section of the ancestry is probably more of what Lemma has always known.
Yeah.
Like, this is who I am. This is what I'm supposed to do. So that really probably would have played into Lemma's whole life up until that point.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why purposeful design. Part of the reason why purposeful design has felt much less an active part of Lemma as a character than Death Connection. Just because I think part of it's the design of the trait, which is more passive.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it just increases like one of your experiences, right?
Yeah, it just makes one of your experiences a little bit buffer, more swole.
Yeah. Yeah. Swole experiences.
Yeah. But also I think you're exactly right that I ended up creating a custom ancestry that was half who he was and half who he was becoming.
And I think that's fantastic. I think that really, probably without meaning to, is like a good like example of like almost a hero's journy kind of thing.
Yeah, a
duality,
if you will.
A duality, if you will. Well, I think that's a good place to end this little piece. So talking about ancestries, you don't have to think of ancestries as like maybe I'm a bad example because I am a fawn and I look like a fawn, but like you don't have like I am an elf. Like maybe you can just kind of pull different pieces and then kind of reskin it how you want. Orlean is a human, but the fact that he's also a fawn girl will play into him a little later on in the season. So I won't spoil that right now, but it's also interesting how his ancestry ended up coming together into how that character lines up. So yeah, just interesting stuff that you can do. You can play around with those mechanics. Fantastic. I want to talk to you about communities today. What do you think about that?
I guess I have to, since you're the producer.
Yes, you will do as I
Yeah.
say.
If I didn't, you'd just edit me saying, yes, I would love to talk about communities.
Yes, I have absolute
Yeah.
power.
No, I'd love to talk about communities. I think they're
Yeah.
an interesting part of Daggerheart.
I think they are an interesting part. So if you want to liken it to another system, it's kind of like a background.
Yeah.
Like if you're a sage or an acolyte, that's that kind of thing. But it's, I think, a little bit more flexible. I mean, you can do all sorts of things with like folk hero, but or other things like that. But I think it's a little bit more flexible. And you and I separately ended up with the Orderborne community background. Yeah. You with the Elegists, and me with the town of Hornsbend, which is a town full of fawns. But they're flavored much differently, even though we're kind of similar in some of those ways. So, talking about the Elegists a little bit, they are essentially almost a religious order.
Yeah.
Without they definitely have religious overtones, but not like, God. So.
Yeah, someone I know recently introduced me to the distinction between an orthopraxy and an orthodoxy. Where orthopraxy is this idea of a really rigid set of practices that are maybe religious in nature and maybe actually not.
Right.
And the elegists have a very strict orthopraxy. They relate to life and death and to the rest of the world in a very ordered way.
Right. For sure. And then with my Orderborne community, the town of Hornsbend is more of a. So I grew up in the South, and so I'm around people who grew up around people who were very involved in their own churches, and so like those people that would like invite you to oh, come to Sunday service, like those kinds of people, is kind of what I based Hornsbend on, in that they're. Specifically, they're very, very fond of the Queen of Harrows. So, everything they do is, around the Queen of Harrows. We have a shrine in that community. But when I was describing it as far as their personality to Asteria was, think of it as Minnesota Nice, which Minnesota Nice and Southern Hospitality have some connections, in that they're very polite and very kind, but there is also a kind of like a, oh, bless your heart kind of feel to them.
Right.
So it's kind of almost the other side of the coin. Like if you have a religious order, and then Hornsbend is like the people who follow the religious order. So it was kind of interesting to see that kind of dynamic.
I think it's also interesting that we both chose Orderborne to reflect upbringings that our characters were very ambivalent about.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that does shape some decisions that both you and I have made, similar decisions that we made separately, that we'll talk about in another episode. In how these two characters were raised, how Ginny was raised, and how she views the world is very much very much reflected of how she grew up in this town. And same thing for Lemma. Lemma had a path, and this was his path, and then all of a sudden he's not on this path and he doesn't know where to go.
Yeah.
So I think that's very interesting. And it's very interesting to have the same mechanic that we both can kind of use, but they kind of read differently. Like we're not two people from the same town, or we're not two elegists. We're two Orderborne people that use those things in different ways. So I thought that was kind of interesting to play off each other that way.
Definitely. And I wonder how common that will be. I mean, Orderborne, I think, is a little bit unique among the communities. A lot of the communities are just about where you come from.
Right.
But Orderborne is about kind of what that place is like, or what that upbringing is like. So it sort of begs your character to have very specific feelings about that. And because narrative arcs being what they are, you're probably not going to feel great about it, right? No one's going to well, maybe not no one, but I think relatively few people are going to be like, I come from a very ordered community, and I'm going to feel great about that through the entire development of my character. No complex feelings will be experienced.
Yes, and then the plot of Footloose never happens.
The plot of Footloose never happens. Everybody's just cool with all the rules.
Yeah.
So I think it is. That was the reason I gravitated towards it, is for that kind of inherent conflict, I think.
Yeah, I had looked at it because Ginny is a seraph. Because it was I'm very comfortable in cleric and paladin classes in other RPGs. And so I was like, well, and I like the way the seraph mechanic works in Daggerheart. So I was looking to see what would go with that. Because my original plan for Ginny was to be in a town, but part of a religious order within that town. Not quite the Elegist route, but something probably a little bit more similar. But it kind of just faded into, no, you're integrated into the town, and this is just the way your town is. Your town is just like essentially the town from Footloose. And like, this is just who you are. And I think that actually ended up working out a lot better for her in the way that she ended up playing. But I do like the community feature in that you have to, have 3 sayings, and once per rest, you describe how you're going to embody one of those, and then you can roll a d20. And I think we have both used that feature. I know I've used mine at least once. I think you've used yours too. Yeah. Do you remember what your 3 dedications are?
My 3 dedications are speak no ill but the truth, comfort those who grieve, and remember those who pass.
Which are great. I think that's fantastic. I love those. I think it's great for anyone to use those, not necessarily, a religious order. I remember 2 of mine off the bat, which is be a shield for those who are weaker than you. And idleness, I think idleness breeds stagnation, and stagnation breeds pestilence, which is essentially like you take the Protestant work ethic and you turn it up to 11.
Idle hands are the devil's playthings.
Yeah. Exactly. It's that kind of deal. And then the last one was for the good of the many. And I know I say all of these at one point or another, but I think I've only used it maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
But it's still very interesting.
I think that's the other thing.
To use
I think there's so much about that mechanic that's interesting. One is that you have to, like, there's an extra homework assignment that the other communities don't have.
Yeah. Now we got to make stuff up.
And as a player, you are trying to come up with dedications that are not too broad, but also like useful.
Yeah.
You don't want a dedication that's like, if between levels 2 and 3 you find yourself in a swamp, make sure to roll with advantage. Like that.
Right.
You want to hit a balance of like fair and character based, but also like somewhat applicable to the situations you'll find. So it's a little tricky.
Right, for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. And the ones that you picked definitely fit Lemma, and the ones that I picked, at least 2 of them, are ones that I could see Ginny using quite often. Yeah. The idleness one is that was something that was just kind of drilled into her again. That background kind of deal. But the Elegists in particular, and I have talked to you a little bit about this off screen, but I do want to talk a little bit about it here. That the Elegists ended up affecting me personally a lot more than I thought it was going to. And I didn't tell you about it for a while because I didn't want to like rip open my chest so I can show you my insides. Like, hi, here's all this stuff that's wrong with me. So my feelings about Lemma's family aside, which if you listen to the show and you continue to listen to, you'll probably end up feeling the same way I do.
They're great. There are no problems.
There are no problems. There are no problems with any of our families.
Right.
What are you talking about? All of our parents are fantastic. Family's complicated, y'all. But what the Elegists do, when we were recording, and it was a scene between you and Asteria, and it was a scene with Lemma's father, Lament, and just talking about it. I remember having to turn my camera off because it ended up impacting me a lot more than I thought it was going to. And it was just kind of like a powerful thing. Obviously, you didn't know that that was going to affect anybody when you did that. But I think it was really interesting that a made up group of people that you had no idea what was going to be the impact on it ended up making an impact on one of the other players. So it's kind of interesting and cool and a little emotional. But the Elegists, there are some bits of the Elegists that I do wish were real.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think, you know, and it definitely hit me when you revealed that, and you know, yeah, I think first of all, I feel really, really privileged that we've arrived at the point where we can share that stuff with each other as players.
yeah,
and also I felt gratified as a creator of the character because it felt like that's what I was going for, was like this group and these people kind of suck, but also
yeah,
within that there's something valuable and beautiful, and maybe
right.
the orientation towards it is flawed or excessively rigid, but there's some kind of core function and core service that is beautiful, and that I think many of us are missing from our lives. Like this is the part of what informs my the way I built Lemma's community is my relationship with religion growing up, which is
right.
complicated, but like there is
As a lapsed Catholic, I agree. Complicated.
there's good and bad,
yeah,
and so just like creating an origin that would let me dwell in that a little bit was part of what I wanted to do.
yeah, yeah. For a long time, I would not actually play any religious characters, and it's only probably within the last few years where like I am a cleric main.
Yeah.
Like that's just what I play. And so now it seems like I only play religious characters, but I'm not religious. Like I don't know, it's part of my processing or whatever, but
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think my theory is that people tend to like go through phases of either playing versions of who they used to be or versions of who they wish they could be, like people who are totally different from them.
Right.
And that those are both kind of attempted corrective acts.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the phase of cut my life into pieces. This is my new OC. Right. Like this is my new character.
My life
and it's just like
pieces.
See, you get it. Is because there's definitely a lot of me specifically in Ginny.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much of you is in Lemma. But it sounds like at least some of it is, at least with with some of that processing. And I know from talking with David, there is a lot of David in Orleans. I don't know about Katie and Evelyn. I know Evelyn is based off someone she knows actually. But no, I think that's very interesting, that you process some things through these characters, which is part of the fun of playing an RPG or TTRPG is... you could do the full power fantasy, I am a demigod and I will wreak havoc upon the earth. Or, you can just like cry at your friends for a couple hours and, process something. So, and both of them somehow are equally as fun.
Catharsis is a bitch, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. So, well, Jay Ben, thank you so much for talking with me today and listening to me like ramble on.
It's been a pleasure to co-ramble.
Yes, we will co-ramble, and maybe we'll co-ramble again soon.
Are we gonna do like a little rockapella outro?
Yeah, I think so.
Duality bites. Boom, 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 boom.
Thank you for listening to Duality Bites, a production of Hag Deal Gaming. If you like what we're doing here, come say hi on Blue Sky or TikTok at Hag Deal Gaming. Leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think. And remember, as a wise person once said,
Yes, I would love to talk about communities,